Good afternoon, everyone. I admire you for coming in after lunch, to talk about organization. That's fantastic. My name is Flavia Nobay. Is this mic too loud or too echoey? You guys okay? It sounds really echoey here. Okay. I'm Flavia Nobay. I'm from the University of Rochester.
And I'm Michelle Lall. I'm from Emory University.
And we are here to tell you that I'm going to tell you that I was not born nor given the talent by God, the universe, cosmos, or whoever you believe in or don't believe in, to be organized. So the reason why this talk got created was because I have fallen down too many times to count, and my knees are bruised and bleeding from my lack of organization. And I was lucky to partner with Michelle, who I think was given a gift of organizational expertise that is beyond anything I've ever seen. So I think we can be a little bit of a yin and a yang for you. For me to tell you how to get up when you stumble, and maybe for Michelle to share with you some of her expertise. All right? Does everybody have a handout? Great. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So if you are coming to this talk as you walk in the door, I want to know what it is that's on your mind. Are you trying to switch a shift? Are you trying to get bagels to your kids' track meet that you forgot about? Are you forgetting that you forgot to upgrade to first class on the airplane? What are the things that are in your mind that are distracting you from what it is that you're trying to do? And it is those things that occupy and invade our experiences that allow us not to live our fullest potential. The thing that we can do, there's one thing that we can do, and the happiest people are those who can do it to the limit of their ability. We can be completely present. We can be all here. We can give our attention to the opportunity before us. The concept of organization is not about getting the things that you need to do done only. The concept of organization is to be available for the potential that is going to come your way. You are gifted, you are talented, you are exceptional people. That's why you're in emergency medicine. Opportunity is going to come to you in a myriad of forms. And if you can recognize it and be available to hear it, you will take advantage of it. To start the conversation, I'm going to give you 30 seconds with that piece of paper that's in front of you. About 30 seconds to describe your perfect day. Just write it down on the bottom of the piece of paper. Describe your perfect day. See a few more people writing. You can bullet point it, full sentences, draw pictures, describe it, it doesn't matter. Describe your perfect day. For the show of hands, I want to know how many of you are living that perfect day. Right, that's why you're at this talk, right? Maybe we're going to give you some answers. What we want to do in this talk is for you to have a goal to get to, and that perfect day, in whatever way you've described it, whether it's a walk with your dog, hang out with your best friend, 14 hours of Netflix, or shift work and doing a project, it doesn't matter how you've described it. We want to help you get to where you want to go. We want you to live that day. Sadly, this is what we look like. Every single day is busy. Yet our goal is to somehow look like this. So hopefully this talk is a long line of commitments that you get to give yourself to get to this place. Whatever you just spent 30 minutes talking about or writing about, we want you to remember that image and recognize that this may be one of many, many steps that are going to help you get to that place. And because we have a very short period of time, we're going to set some very clear expectations for you within this talk. This talk will definitely definitely not fix your life, all right? We are not going to fix your life. That is a lifetime commitment. Our goal is to get you to the peaceful place one tiny step at a time. This talk is also like a diet. If anybody's ever been on a diet, you know how hard it is to get to your ideal weight, but you also know how much harder it is to stay at your ideal weight, especially in menopause. So, just to let you know, depending on where you are in your stages of life, you are going to have difficulty getting to and staying in your happy place. You have to have a set of hierarchies of principles of values in your life. We can't give you that in this talk, all right? So, for instance, what I mean is family is greater than friends, is greater than work, is greater than dog for me. Michelle, what's your value system?
I would say family is number one. I don't know, I probably have to put my pets second, because if I relied on my husband, they'd all die, and that would cause a big problem in the house. But then work. But you'll see as we go a little further into this, I have some other core values that center around reading for pleasure and exercise that I don't give up, no matter how busy I get.
Once you have made a commitment to yourself about those priorities, the system that we're going to give you really may be helpful. But you have to recognize that you have a set of priorities, and those priorities need to be defined by your best friends, your parents, your significant other, your boss, your organization, whatever it is. You have to come in having those. All right, another set of expectations. We're going to spend, a lot of people who we give this talk to want us to teach people how to say no. Why didn't they tell me how to say no? So my answer is no. I can't tell you how to say that. All right, that's not what this talk is about. It's another talk, but that's not what this talk is. But eventually, you're going to have to learn to say no, and our goal here is to help you recognize when no may be a good answer, but we're not going to teach you exactly how to say no. And then the last set of things that we want you to know about is that we can't have everything all the time. Because you land up saying no, or because something doesn't work in your schedule, or whatever your value set is, it doesn't mean that it's not important and not valuable and you won't get to it at a certain time. But on any given day, we've all realized as grown-ups, we can't have it all. And sometimes we lose the perspective of that. We think we can do it all. You as an emergency medicine doctor, you are prepared for anything, anywhere, at any time. You never say no. But we're going to have to learn to say, I can't do it all. I can't see the entire ED every single day, all day long, all the time. So why are you at this talk? If you're at this talk, you are likely either here to support me, which I appreciate, or maybe you're blowing up, right? So what does blowing up mean? Overscheduled, can't complete projects, collects lots of stuff. That includes apps, books, techniques, podcasts to help you get organized, yet you still continue to be anxious and you still feel relatively unprepared. Showing up means that you're sanely scheduled, you can get through the things you've committed to, you're organized in a systematic way, you're relatively calm, and most importantly, you're prepared for the opportunity that is going to come your way. And that is something that is incredibly important. So what is the difference between these two things? Do you have to be born to know how to show up versus blow up? Do you have to be born with the skill set to do that? And the answer is no. You can learn some organizational philosophies and strategies to help you get there. And Michelle and I are going to spend the rest of the talk kind of talking about that. Does anyone know what this is? Did anybody say Starlings Curve? If you did, you're correct. This is Starlings Curve. Like a myocyte, we are maximally functional and increasingly functional and effective as we get up this perfect slope. And then we get to level 2 and we rock it, right? You guys have all felt that. You know exactly how to do it, you know how long to do it for, and you do it well. But somehow, some way, we start slipping off that curve. And you all have to recognize what that curve slippage is for you. What is the grease that makes you slide down that? Is it a family member that gets sick? Is it a string of 6 nights? Is it is it an extra project on Barthel and Sis that you agreed to 2 years ago that you just remember is due in a couple of days? Getting down to the slope of 3 and 4 is not only dangerous for you, it's dangerous for those around you, and it's dangerous for your own sense of being able to be effective for a long, long time. And it takes away the possibility that's coming your way. I don't think we can move 2 very much for each and every one of you, but we spend our lives, and you guys should recognize this, we're going to spend our lives trying to figure out where our 2 is, where our maximal efficiency and output is. That is unbelievably important. It is our life's work, especially in the administrative arena. Our goal, again, is to help protect and maximize your 2 at this talk. And I think this is a very important statement. A task left undone remains undone in 2 places, at the actual location of the task, and more importantly, inside your head. Incomplete tasks in your head consume the energy of your attention as they gnaw at your consciousness. Gnawing at your consciousness, that constant, never-ending sense of I'm not done, is exhausting.
Okay, so what do we do when we start falling off the curve? What do you guys do when you feel everything is snowballing, have all these deadlines coming up? Who makes a list? Who spends probably too much time making the list instead of just doing the work, right? But we're all inclined to do it because how good does it feel when you cross something off the list, right? You feel like you've made this grand accomplishment, right? So all sorts of lists. Right? I think we all have some of these. But we're going to try to teach you to think about lists in a different way and prioritize things differently. So our goals and objectives, right? We want to get you closer to your personal happy place, despite your crazy career in emergency medicine, right? So when I started my journey in emergency medicine, I was like, this is going to be great. I'm going to work shifts. I have all this time to do this academic work because I can do my academic work from 7 to 3 and work my 3 to 11 and then sort of sleep and get up the next day and parent and do it all over again, right? But it's not sustainable. So we're going to talk about some strategies for this. And we want you to focus on the things that you are interested in. And in order to do this, you have to be able to prioritize, schedule, understand what your options really are, and then we're going to give some words of wisdom to talk about this a bit further. So have any of you guys heard of either of these books? So Deep Work by Cal Newport and then David Allen's Getting Things Done. So we're going to talk about these kind of in parallel with one another. And these we have used to help create this talk and frankly to help organize our own lives. So who knows what deep work is? So if you have the time, Cal Newport has a couple TED Talks and some podcasts. But deep work is our creativity. It's our brainstorming. It's our new thoughts, our new ideas. And then his counter to that is shallow work. So who knows what shallow work is? A lot of the things we spend a lot of time on every day. Answering email, creating a PowerPoint, responding to something from your child's school, responding to that email about your chart deficiencies that aren't really deficient, but you still have to go in and send them a note back that says, no, it's actually done, or no, it's not actually my chart, right? Who gets those? Those are so frustrating, right? But those are also necessary things. And then what we're going to do is talk through David Allen's strategy of how you start to really just digest this amount of material. So what is it? And we're going to prioritize things, organize them, and then we're going to disposition it. Right? We love to disposition things. That's what we do every day, right? It's the best thing when the patient rolls by and you're like, oh, disposition admission. I'm done. I know where I'm going to go in the end, right? So we get great reward in that. That's part of our specialty.
So deep work is a place that you go to be creative, to get energized, and to move your life forward. Shallow work doesn't necessarily help you move your priorities forward. It just allows you to accomplish what you need to exist. Working deeply is a place of distraction-free creativity, ingenuity, and focus. Oftentimes what happens with deep work is we think that we confuse busy work for deep work. Being busy is not a proxy for productivity and for getting things done properly. You have to be bored to work deeply. So what does that mean? It means every single time you get a notification or a ping or a email reminder or a sound or an alert, you are pulling away from the deep work that you may have scheduled yourself to do. And every single time you get notified, the data is very, very clear that you get distracted from the deep work that you may be engaged in, you return to that deep work less productive. So you essentially are diluting your ability to be productive, creative, ingenious, the things that make you unique and special and important and unreplaceable. You have to drain the shallows, Cal Newport says, and what that means is that you have to clear off your plate the stuff that is distracting your mind from the stuff that will help you move forward. And you've got to give yourself time to do that. If you don't do that, what lands up happening is your deep work is infiltrated in a cancerous way where you never actually get to the place where you need to be productive. And the most important thing that we've learned from deep work is that the schedule that may be in front of you that you may create at the end of today is not a barrier. It sets you free. Scheduling frees you because it allows you to have perspective and it allows you to know what it is you value and it allows you to be able to be welcome and open and receptive to productive, creative, new projects that come your way. So I've always resented the schedule, but what I now know is it is absolutely the quintessential reason why I can be productive.
Okay, so I think we've talked about these points already, so we're going to continue on. So again, how many of you feel like you look like that when you're trying to do your academic work, right? It's my turn to write the results section of a manuscript, and I'm sitting down, I'm trying to do it, and then I remember, oh, I forgot to answer that email, or oh, I really should call the dentist because it's in normal business hours right now, or I should do this, right? And we believe that we're multitasking, but there's no such thing as multitasking, right? The brain can only focus on one task at a time. So in the end, all I'm doing is taking myself further and further away from a deep work state. And I've probably created a situation where it's going to be darn near impossible to sit down with the right amount of focus to get the job done. Okay, so now we're going to show you how to do it. All right. Don't let it scare you, okay? But this is what my calendar looks like, okay? So on the top, I do have my child care hours, because if somebody else isn't watching my kids, I need to. So a lot of my schedule revolves around that. So everything that is in gray is non-negotiable in my life. So you'll see that includes sleeping, getting my kids ready for school if it's my job to do it. I told you I like to exercise, so going to the gym is on there. But these are all necessary things. Making dinner, commuting, eating dinner, getting my kids to bed, getting myself to bed. You'll see I have personal things on there too. I have some movie time with my husband. And then I have some unstructured time too, okay? So everything on there that is orange is potentially my free time, okay? So that's what it looks like just pictorially. So I challenge each of you, when you get home, to really try to look at your calendar this way. How much extra time do you really have? And if you really force yourself to look at it this way, I can guarantee you have more time than you think. And you'll start to recognize where you're wasting a lot of time. Okay, so you must prioritize your personal time. So this can be your time to binge watch Netflix. This is the time to have an outing with your family, with your friends, to do things that are enjoyable that are not work related. So we've modified the calendar a bit. So now you can see some of those orange spaces from before are purple, because that is time with my family or for myself that I'm not willing to give up. And we all know that the epidemic of physician burnout is running rampant. Our specialty has some of the highest rates. But many also report pretty good satisfaction with their work-life balance. And I think this is why. I think we inherently are a little bit better at protecting ourselves than some of our colleagues in medicine. So that purple there is my protection. That's how I know I'm doing things for myself and my family to keep me well and keep me balanced. So what's left over? So now we're going to kind of focus in on these orange blocks. So remember, an overarching theme in this goes back to Flavia's example about the diet, right? It's what's your split? I can't do that 100% of the time, but if I can do it 80-20, I'm operating pretty well, right? But you have to be realistic with what you can do. Is it 60-40? That's okay. 50-50? But one of the key things to remember is that deep work needs to be in longer increments. So at least 1 hour up to 3 hours, right? Because we've all been in this situation before where Flavia said it before, you have to get bored, right? Which means you have to be in a distraction-free state long enough to let all that stuff go out of your mind so you can really focus. Does anyone know how long it takes the average adult to get themselves into this state? Anyone want to make a guess? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes? An hour, 2 hours. So for most adults, it's about 17 minutes. Right? But so you have to budget that into this time. You have to say, I'm going to have to give myself that time to get in the frame of mind to get the job done. And you can help yourself by giving yourself time to do the shallow work. Right? So we've been talking about this a lot recently, but right, technology. We have technology at our fingertips, on our watches. It's everywhere, right? But, most of us did just fine. Like, when I was a kid, right, there was 2 phones in my house. One was on the wall in the kitchen, and one was in my parents' room. And if you wanted to make a phone call, you had to stand there next to the phone and dial it and stand at the wall. And we were all okay. Nobody needed to reach me in the middle of the night. I didn't need an alert that somebody had posted a new photo of themselves somewhere, right? So this goes back to really disconnecting from social media and getting rid of some of these shallows. Okay, so here's the calendar again, and now we're going to talk about deep work, shallow work. So the things in blue are my deep work. So this is time that I have set aside to be really productive. So this is to write book chapters, to work on grants, which take me a long time because I'm not very good at doing that. Portions of manuscripts, coming up with new research ideas. Curriculum development. New things that I want to develop and innovate. I'm an associate residency director, so I spend a lot of my time with resident education. So this is coming up with new ideas, things to make the residency better, processing feedback that we've gotten back.
And please recognize, guys, the deep work is the stuff that moves your career, right? Answering an email oftentimes doesn't move your career. If you don't answer emails, it will move your career just the other direction. But the deep work is the stuff that pushes you forward, creates the event that you want to do, has the effect on your family and your life that you want it to have. It is critically important for you to recognize that if you do not put blocks of time to do the work that changes your life, that work does not get done.
Right, and this goes back to that split, 80-20, 70-30. If I can get to 80% of those blue blocks, I've done pretty well. The red spaces are the dedicated time for the shallow work. Answering email, looking at stuff on Facebook or Twitter if I want. Right? And for some of you, that may be critically important to who you are and your presence in emergency medicine. So that's fine. Then you build it in as one of your grays. Just don't build it in as 2 hours of time. Right? All right. So now we're going to take our next deep dive here. So the whole premise of getting things done is you must use your mind to get things off your mind. So now we're going to go through this. The best tool we have for organization is ourselves. It's your mind. So let's make the most of it. Okay. So let's talk about stuff, right? Who has a million things to do? Me. right? Who struggles to organize them? Me. If I'm having a bad week, when I lay down to go to bed, who has this happen where all of a sudden it's like this circling loop of all the things you still have to do, the things you're hoping you don't forget to do tomorrow, and then you're wondering if you should get up and just do it so you don't forget in the morning when you're too tired when you got up, right? We've been there. This is reality. So when something new comes in, when there's new stuff, new input, you have to capture it, okay? So you have to see what needs your attention, because you're not going to remember it if you put it off. And then it's going to be one of those things like, holy cow, I forgot that book chapter was due at the end of this week, and I was supposed to have been writing it for the last 5 months, right? And then you put yourself into a horrible situation. So what we're going to do is define things. So we're going to capture what it is. We're going to clarify what it means. We're going to organize it. We're going to reflect on it, meaning we're going to decide what really needs to be done and what we can delegate or defer, and then we're going to engage. So what's on your mind? So this was a list. I told you I make lists, even though I told you they're not good. But these were some of the things that were on my mind. Didn't take me long to do this, but you can see it's kind of a mix of things. Some of these are things I need to do for work. So some of them are residency related, some of them are curriculum related, some of them are just things I needed to do in my regular life. There's a couple things on there I dream about doing, which maybe someday I'll get there. So step one is doing the big data dump. It's writing it down. So this is like the one and only time where your big list is allowed. It's all the things that you need to complete.
You need to get everything that's in your mind onto paper or into a system. You need to have it go through one funnel. And if you don't do this on a regular basis, your mind gets clogged up like a dirty sewer.
Okay. So then what you have to do is you have to determine what is a project. Okay, so in this sense, a project is something that's complex. It's complicated. It has multiple steps to get it to completion. And it requires your thought. So it's not just a simple task. It's not something that's on your list that you just cross off, right? It's not buying my mom a plane ticket to come visit me in October, right? It's something more complicated than that, something that requires more attention, and we're going to come back to that in a minute. Okay, so then what do? Right? Now you've got all this stuff, and now you need to decide what you're going to do with it. So is it actionable? So I want you to think about, is it something that you can really complete right now, yes or no? And if the answer is no, then is it just trash? Like the emails I get every day from the locums companies that I have told I'm not interested in locums, right? Like that directly goes to trash. So maybe it's actionable, but it still goes into the garbage. So someday maybe. You see, we had some of those on the prior list, and we'll talk about those a bit more. But that would be like taking a pottery class, or researching some cooking schools, or looking at the 2017 New York Times bestseller list. So those are things that I want to do, but do I have to do them right now? No.
But so it's important not to throw those away.
Right.
Because that is where inspiration and creativity, and when you get through your schedule, you're going to be able to reach into that bucket, pull it out and be like, that's right, I wanted to go to cooking school in France. I'm going to look into that.
And then reference, right? So I'm sure you guys all have some huge file somewhere, Dropbox, Google, your email, where
Evernote, yeah.
Evernote, where somebody has sent you an article and you're like, ooh, someday I'm going to read that because that looks interesting, so I'm going to tuck it away, right? So those reference things are important, right? They're not trash.
Yeah, and you should not get rid of them. So I use Evernote. I directly put every single reference thing that I need directly into Evernote. So I have it just linked up to my iOS platform. And then it has a really great functionality that you can search it when you need it. I don't even have to make files. I can just, on the free version, I can just search it. And if you do the paid version, you can actually search words from the article, which is awesome.
All right. So now we want you to make a list. So on your paper there, make a list, 5 things, 10 things, whatever, they're just occupying space in your mind, right? And you saw my list. Some of those things were really kind of...
Write it on the back of your paper, not on the graph in the front. Or
some
the chart
were kind
in
of
the front.
foolish, like one was to give remember the dog's heartworm pills. So like anything that's just occupying space in your mind that you're worried about forgetting. Okay, hopefully everyone's had the chance to jot down one or two things. So in this example, we're going to highlight the wellness curriculum. And this would be any project. So what we want you to start thinking about is what is the immediate next action you need to do to get to the end game, right? Because we all get ahead of ourselves and it's like, oh, I'm going to develop this curriculum. And then you get overwhelmed and then you keep putting it aside, putting it aside, putting it aside until you have a deadline, right? So in this case, my next step was to email somebody about second victim syndrome. And the immediate step after that was to email somebody else about mindfulness, right? So we're taking a really large, complicated project and breaking it down into truly immediate next actions. So this is a way to move through projects one bit at a time. And then this way, when you get ready to sit down and do the deep work, you're ready because you've picked off some of the smaller pieces to get you there. Okay, so then last but not least, is this an actionable item? So it's in tiny print up there, but it says, will it take less than 2 minutes? And if the answer is yes, then you do it. You clear it. You clear it out of your mind, you clear it off your plate, you cross it off your list. But if it won't, then you need to make another decision. So are you going to delegate it, or are you going to defer it? And we're going to talk about each of these in particular. So if you are going to defer it, you have to put it somewhere else.
Deferring it does not mean you stick it under a giant book and you walk away from it. That is the quickest way to get overwhelmed with stuff that you need to do. Deferring it means that you put it to another place and another time, but you address it, and you have a plan on how to address it.
Right? So if you have a list of phone calls that you need to make, and you're going to schedule a time to make the phone call, put the phone number in your calendar of who you need to call, right? Otherwise, what happens? I make a note that says, call Flavia, and then I'm like, oh, I didn't save her phone number, and then I go in my email, and I have to search for it, right? And now I've wasted all this time. Where if when I had put it into my calendar to begin with, had I put the correct phone number, it would have made my life a little bit easier. And you can have these lists for everything. I have one, it's not on this one, but that's after night shift, right? So I don't sleep very well after I work at night. I sleep for about 3 hours and that's it. So I'm always a little foggy, but there are some really low-hanging fruit, shallow work things that I can do in that state, but I know I can't do deep work, right? So think about those times. We have a few more here, right? So these atlas, right? So when I'm at the airport, getting ready to come to this talk, these are things I can be working on. If I'm in the carpool line waiting for my kids, those are phone calls I can make, or emails I can check while we're all stopped because they haven't dismissed school yet. Or if I'm at my computer, those are the things that I need to do.
So if you're deferring something, you need to give it a home that you can accomplish it in. You can't just put it on your to-do list, because your to-do list doesn't have a structure, doesn't have organization, and most importantly, it doesn't have time associated with it. So if you give it a place to live where you can accomplish it effectively, what you're effectively doing is taking all those things that you just put down of things to do, and you're giving it a space and a time to do it that calms you down, because it's not just hanging over your head or stuck in your mind. The at-computer list is unbelievably important. I spend a ton of time at my computer, a ton of time, and being able to know exactly what I need to do at my computer that is not deep work related really helps me. And I spend a ton of time in airports, a ton of time, 2.5 to sometimes 8 hours depending on my flight. I know exactly what I can do on my list. And these atlas live in my computer, in my email inbox. And the reason they say at is because it brings it to the top of my folders, which you guys probably all know, right? And this is really important. And I can access it anywhere I want to go because it's on my iPhone. Mm-hmm. You can get whatever app you want to figure out how your lists work. It does not matter. People like Nirvana, people like Evernote, people like OmniFocus, it doesn't matter. You can use whatever, but you need to have an organizational system where it takes your defer stuff to do that you are not going to accomplish and puts it in a place to do it.
Okay, So then there is this delegate it. And this is probably the newest component of this for me. So how many of you have been asked to write a letter of recommendation? How many of you have been given kind of a short time frame to write it? Yes. So this is perfect. So I get the ask, but then I email back, I am writing your letter on Friday afternoon. So already they know that if I don't have the stuff before then, there's no letter. This is what I need from you, right? So now I have delegated it back to somebody else, and I put it in my at waiting folder. So I know there is no action for me to complete at this time, and I will be ready on Friday because I've scheduled it in my little red block to get it done. But it relies on somebody else. And you should copy yourself so that then when they don't send it to you on time and they get upset, you can say, well, remember, I asked you to have me that information by Friday.
So many of us use the delegate list to clear our task list off. That's not effective because it just comes back to you. When you let me know what date we can meet, isn't that a classic one? Mm-hmm. After somebody says, hey, can we meet? Sure, let me know when, instead of just assigning them 4 dates. What you're doing is you're creating work for yourself. Your job is in every single task you do to minimize the impact on your to-do list. You have to minimize the impact, and this really streamlines the process. So anytime you look at a task that you need to accomplish and you're planning to delegate it, which is perfectly fine and a great way to clear off your inbox, make sure you have the things you need to take care of it efficiently.
All right, and do it we already talked about. Stick to the 2-minute rule. If it's going to take longer than that, you shouldn't be doing it. All right, so now, projects and project plans. Okay, so this is the deep work, right? This is the good stuff. This is truly our academic currency. This is where we create scholarship, innovation, right? This is where we push ourselves to the next level. This is why most of us are in academics, right? For this other piece. We could all take probably a purely clinical job somewhere else and be compensated better than we are now. But that doesn't give us the reward. This is the reward. So we're going to schedule this time. And we've now organized everything, and we've used our inbox every time we have an idea. So we're writing all these things down, and we're going to create a way to organize them. So back to the calendar. So now that you've organized everything, you need to understand where you're going to put it. And overscheduling is easy to do. But if somebody asks me, do I have time for something? And I can roughly look at my schedule, a month out or whenever I have my clinical schedule. And if my blue boxes are really small for a couple weeks in a row, I probably don't have time to say yes. So this is where your schedule can free you. Because now I know how much time I do or do not have to devote to something and over what time period.
There's a lot of authenticity. And when somebody says, hey, Flavia, can you do this? And I say, I can do it, but I can't do it until September. There is nothing wrong saying I've committed to projects. My commitment is to do the projects well and effectively, and then I'd like to take yours. People will respect it. You may not get that project immediately or that organizational role or leadership or collaboration, but they will come back to you because you will be a person who has integrity. And that is something that's very important.
Okay, so who feels like this sometimes? Right? You hear the alert and you just can't not look, right? You feel like you're chained to your computer. So Flavia is going to give us some statistics about how much time we spend on these things. And I just want you to kind of think about it. How much time do you really need to spend on these things?
So I have started to use email and social media as a transition before everything that I do. A transition in or a transition out. You will leave this room and you will check your phone because there will be something that you may have missed emergently that's incredibly important. The problem is that you will spend nearly 2 hours on social media every day, which translates to 5 years of your life. 5 years of your life. I have chased years of my life down rabbit holes of hamsters with funny looking outfits, kitty cat videos, Ellen DeGeneres' dance off, you name it. I have spent years of my life and I resent it because I am not a better person for it. I have not moved my needle forward. I have missed my hierarchy of priorities because of it. And I don't want to do that any longer. Every time you get an alert or a badge, you switch from a potential project, you make a choice from doing something that's meaningful or valuable to you to doing something that is potentially superficial and very transient. This is your life briefly. Non-negotiables, so Michelle's grays on her calendar, is about 52%. Sleep is about 34%, depending what year you are in residency. And the rest of your life is about 14%, right? That's where you own it. You control it. Sadly, this is the data. Of that 14% of your life, 38% will be on YouTube, 34% on Facebook, Instagram 25%. And guess what you're left with? You're left with that mint green color to do everything you want to do in your life. So I'm going to ask you, on your perfect day, is that how you see your life? Is that what's meaningful to you? And if it is, good on you. You're living the life you want. But if it's not, understand what social media / distractions do for you. And especially for those of you that are residents, recognize it's not that you don't have enough time. Maybe you're not using it perfectly. And when you're tired and you're fatigued and you're exhausted, whether you're a resident or a junior faculty member, this becomes meaningful because it is a percentage of your life. When you live in that light blue zone, I just want to say one last thing. You are frantically struggling like a hamster in a wheel to try to get the stuff you have to get done. And you feel like you're overwhelmed. You feel like you don't have time to do it. You feel like you're running all the time. And it truly is because the time that you have chosen, the time that you own, you may not have been using it the way you intended to. So through all of this scheduling and all of this process we've just told you about, the most important thing of all of it is this slide. Every single day, Michelle, can you forward? You have to schedule time to review your day. And I'm talking about 3 to 5 minutes. Every single day. No matter what you do, no matter what rotation you're on, no matter what shift you just did, no matter how many nights you've done, you have to spend a few minutes reviewing your day. And it's not just reviewing what you've done that day, what you've accomplished that day, but previewing what tomorrow is. How many meetings have you missed? How many times did you forget that thing is due? How many times if you only knew your organizational hierarchy, could you have made a different priority as opposed to realizing you were late and backing up and running frantically? Reviewing and previewing for 5 minutes a day is something that I put on my calendar. It's an alert. It's the only alert that I want on my calendar. Secondly, for 1 hour a week, depending on your week, it could be half an hour, it could be 2 hours if you have a lot, you need to review your lists. You need to do a data dump from your mind so that you start going through that entire process for every single task, and you need to review your projects that are important to you. David Allen has 200 projects on his project list. I don't like that many projects. I like about 15 to 20. And I go through each and every project and realize, what am I waiting for? What's the next step? What can I do? That is 1 hour of my day that I feel like saves me maybe 4 hours in my week. Reviewing, habitualizing, making sure that you understand where you've been and where you're going is critical. It's like running a race blindfolded if you don't do that.
Okay, so we'd like to leave you with some take-home points here. So I think first and foremost, don't keep it in your head. Use your mind to get stuff off your mind.
Distraction-free work. If you allow yourself to be distracted-free from the projects that you're focused on, you will move the needle on doing what you want to do.
You own your free time, so use it wisely. Use it in a way that you find value.
You have to control your projects, or your projects will control you. You get to decide your fate and how you're going to live the rest of your life. If you don't recognize what you're currently doing, and you don't predict what is going to be coming down the pipeline, what you land up doing is you land up being reactionary all the time. And that is something that does not get you to your peaceful place. Out of the strain of the doing into the peace of the done. We really hope you enjoyed this. It is a brief toe dip into getting things done and deep work. We want to encourage you to get the book, watch the TED Talks, read whatever blogs you want to. It takes time, it takes effort, but I'd like to congratulate you for starting the process here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.